from my end. So.
All right, got all that turned off.
All right, guys.
Make sure I get this off.
We're supposed to get 3 to 4 inches tonight, so that'll be fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Dave Putz here from JKP Holdings. Alongside of me, Nathan Turner. Nathan, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Our special guest today, Mr. Cody Cox. How are
Hey.
you, sir?
I'm doing well out here on the West Coast. Got a little bit of a sprinkling of some snow overnight. Of course, in Oregon, when it snows, everything shuts down. So I'm nice and toasty in my home office today.
Oh, yeah. I've had snow inches for days now. I think my kids want to see grass again, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. We got about, I'd say, half an inch of ice overnight. And then it snowed about maybe another half inch on top of that. And, for the first time since I've been with the state for 10 years, they shut down all the state campuses from Portland all the way down to Salem. So it's, yeah, but I think the reason they did that, of course, is because most of us are working remotely, 80 to 90% of the time anyway. So it's like, just like normal, but I get to sit out and look at the little weather, and we're supposed to get some more tonight for the weekend. So that'll be great. Yeah.
Nice.
We don't get enough of that here.
I know we feel bad because our kids are not knowing what snow days are anymore.
Yeah,
Right. They're like, wait, a snow day is a remote day for our kids. They're home right now. So it's kind of stings for them, right? But
I actually hear somebody outside shoveling the sidewalk, which is unusual for us.
Yeah. We did last weekend. We built it up. We've got enough snow piled up right along the driveway and along the edge of the street. My son and I went out and we built a snow tunnel and it's big enough. We did a corner unit kind of thing, a little room where we can sit in and you can sit up, and there's room for a couple of us in there. And
That's awesome.
it's so much fun.
So Stephen Tucker, who's listening in, said it's 80 degrees in Phoenix right now. So I'm not sure if I'm jealous or not of him, but
You're missing out, man. I like the snow. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we went snow tubing yesterday. So awesome. Well, Cody, I think that we kind of went to our normal conversation with each other because Cody Cox, me and Nathan have known Cody for many years now.
Yeah.
Cody's been one of the guys that we've gone to for questions. Cody has some very unique knowledge in the space. He'll share a little bit about that, but he did dive into, today about being a note investor, having a W-2 job, and how to do it, and then what the struggles are with that. So Let's start off with Cody. How did you get into notes? How did you hear about it? And what time frame was it about?
Well, a little bit about my background. I've been in the mortgage industry since 1984. So I've been in it 38 and a half years.
Mm-hmm.
I started off with a mortgage loan servicer out of Walla Walla, Washington. And I basically, my first permanent job there, I was the guy that when you called the 800 number to talk about your mortgage, I was the guy that answered the phone.
Okay.
And I had all the case numbers with the loan numbers that ended in 86 to 00. So that was my case numbers. And so I got to learn the servicing side of things right away. And so all the calls that came in, customer service, was a good basic background for what this started is. And then I moved from that area into the Portland, Oregon area later on that year and worked for the largest savings and loan in the Northwest at that time, but that was on the origination side. Mm-hmm. And eventually I went into loan originations, became one of the leading loan officers for this large savings and loan that is no longer in business. But then And so I got a pretty good idea about originating loans. And then I stepped into a management role and managed a couple of mortgage origination offices for Washington Mutual out here in the Northwest. And, they're no longer in business. And so, I managed an office that did 210 million on an annual basis. And so got to know that aspect of as well. And so, I then went into work for a company where I became an account executive, a wholesale account executive. And those are the folks that, go out and you used to be able to say as a mortgage broker, I have 100 different lenders to choose from. Well, I was one of those lenders, and my goal was to become one of the top 1 or 2 lenders for these particular brokers.
Wow.
That company is kind of no longer in business. So I decided that I'd go to the state of Oregon, and so far they're still in business. But I came to the state of Oregon in 2011 and started working what is called the Oregon Homeownership Stabilization Initiative, which is the Oregon version of the hardest hit funds.
Oh.
And so my role in that position was I was the servicer liaison, which basically meant I was a single point of contact for all the servicers across the country that had homeowners in the state of Oregon. So they all called me. And I all called them, and so all the exchanges, all the what they called they had a term for that. It basically was glorified Excel spreadsheets that would back and forth came through me. And when I first got there, we had about 55 to 57 mortgage loan companies, servicing companies on board. By the time I left, there was 225 on board. So I got a pretty good mix of all these kind of folks across the country that were servicing loans. And then if they had questions on the program, on the hardest hit funds, I was the one that was supposed to answer those questions. So in those days, I was pretty well deep into the hardest hit funds, from a state agency perspective. And of course, for those of you who may not know what the hardest hit funds were, back in the 2008, 2009, 2010 period when the country was going through, excessive foreclosures and, homeowner loss and all those kind of things. The U.S. Treasury set up a $1.7 trillion fund, dispersed it out to all what they consider the hardest hit funds across the country, Oregon being one of them. And I think we got, several $100,000, and our goal was to try and keep people in the houses. And I think we did a pretty good job at doing that. I see here on the website that's still up that we helped over 13,000 homeowners retain their houses in the state of Oregon. And so I was with them for a couple of years, and then I got a position which I call is across the street. The state of Oregon is one of those unique states in the country that offers a dedicated veterans home loan program to the state's veterans that's separate and distinct from the federal VA program. It's our own program. So in California, they have that program. They call it CalVet. Texas has a program. Wisconsin kind of has a program. Alaska has a program, and so does Oregon. And so I'm the senior executive that runs that program for the state of Oregon. I'm in charge of originations and servicing, and I report to the director and the chief financial officer. So that's my day job. It's a pretty intense day job. And so everything veteran oriented for home loans that's not a federal VA loan, comes through across my desk for the most part. So, I'm still very much in the thick of mortgage loan servicing and originations and maintaining a full-time day job, but also trying to get involved in this note stuff. I remember one of the things in my background as well is that I was the president of the board of directors of the local Real Estate Investors Association here in Portland, Oregon, which we called Northwest RIA. And it was part of my job was to bring in, speakers, national speakers to speak to the group. And that's one of the ways that RIAs, generate revenue for the RIA, because they're mostly nonprofits, although some of them are privately owned, is by selling products and getting kind of the product that these national speakers came in. So I had a national speaker. I was here in Portland and I'm trying to wholesale houses, trying to do some minor rehabs, all those kind of things that really are difficult to do when you have a full-time day job. If you're trying to negotiate with the seller, you kind of have to do it after hours or on weekends. And it takes up a tremendous amount of time. And most of those require some sort of huge marketing effort with trying to find lists, generate letters, send them out, respond to phone calls. And it's just really hard to do that on a full-time day job. So I'm sitting in a RIA meeting one time. I have a guy come in, which I think we all know, and he's out of Florida. He works for a company that's out of Texas, and he's a great guy. Became great friends with him, and he's sitting there. I'm sitting there on the Saturday webinar, Saturday presentation, and listening to him, and I go, what the heck am I doing? I've been in the mortgage industry at this point 30 some years. This makes perfect sense to me. Why don't I not just start doing this? Because, I can do it anywhere in the world. I don't have to generate a bunch of letters to send them out. And, and there's a lot of people that target, seller finance loans, and they still send out marketing letters. But the way it was presented, I go, this just makes sense to me. I can do it in the evening, I can do it on the weekend, and still not interrupt really what I've got going on a full-time day job.
Yeah.
So what I started doing then is meeting guys like you, and there's other people's out there, and getting advice on how to get this going. And I asked one of the guys,
what year was this?
Oh, it had to be 2014, 2015, somewhere in that time range. Yeah, because I remember the first note I bought was in 2015.
Okay.
And one of the pieces of advice is, I would need some help with this because, after going through the 2008, 2009, my capital was very limited. I had to save my house twice, all that sort of stuff. I mean, I've been through some stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, so I asked the guy, I said, well, how do I get going? How do I get people to want to invest with me? He says, the first thing you need to do is do your own thing. Use your own capital. Yeah. So I stood up a self-directed IRA, bought a couple notes. One was a little second mortgage on a rental house in Bend, Oregon. And apparently the owners of that particular rental house thought that a second mortgage could not foreclose. Well, we started foreclosure. And as soon as it hit, they contacted me. We ended up settling at a reduced amount and still put, $7,000 or $10,000 into my self-directed IRA. Wow. That's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
So the second thing I did is I bought another little note out of Klamath Falls, Oregon, which is not exactly the hotbed of anything. But this particular borrower had bought it as a second home. This borrower was out of California. I'm quite sure that borrower never set foot in the house. When I bought the note, I bought it for $12,500. It was in pretty bad shape. We ended up, I hired some people to chase this borrower through Southern California. We finally caught up to the borrower. They signed a deed in lieu. I said, if you sign the deed in lieu, they bought it as a second home, so the deficiency judgment on that could have taken place.
Right.
But if you sign the deed in lieu, I'll waive my rights to deficiency. They signed it. We got it back. I boarded up the house. I listed it on mid-May of that year, and it sold 2 days later. We closed at the end of the month, and the return on that particular one, I think we sold it for $25,500, and you do the calculations, it was an annualized return of 103%.
Fantastic.
So now I had some case studies.
Yeah.
And so by using those case studies, I was able to start a new venture that where I was able to get some investors, and we did some joint venture investing. We did that for about 4 or 5 years. I am now in the process of winding that venture down. It is something that when you do a joint venture, there's a couple things you need to be really, really sensitive to. One is how the joint venture is structured, because if you structure it wrong, and I see a lot of it being structured incorrectly, it could be considered selling a security. Mm-hmm. And although it may not rise to the attention of the SEC, it certainly will rise to the attention of the state regulators. And so you need to be sensitive to that if that's the way you're doing it. The second thing is all the risk on that particular venture is tied up into one asset. Mm-hmm. And so if something goes wrong with that one asset, then the risk escalates quite a bit. Yeah. And so one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to do something at a higher level. And so at the beginning of last year, 2020, we actually stood up a fund. And we're in the process of, doing some capital raise. And I just submitted a bid on 19 assets yesterday that we're trying to raise. We've got some investors involved there. It's all, filed with the states. It's all filed with the SEC. And so really what that is a difference to me between note investing and a note business, which is something we can talk about a little bit later. But again, the whole thing around this here is I still have a full-time day job.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
let's talk about that, because that's
yeah,
a big thing for a lot of people
yeah,
that has not departed from their full-time job,
right.
is home all the time. I still have a W-2 job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that flexibility is limited. So what were some of the struggles you had with having a W-2 job? How did you get over them? And what have you done that you did differently when you first got started?
Well, I think, how the struggles I've had with that amount to time and energy, because if you're working with investors, you're working with sellers, you've got to get things ordered in the note business. You still got to find a time and be able to do that because you have investors that have put some faith and money into you. But you still can't do anything to neglect the state job. And the interesting thing, of course, is with my job, being the executive that runs the home loan program for Oregon veterans, I had to go through a potential conflict of interest test back with my employer. Right. And because I was not purchasing notes, although the first notes I just talked about were in the state of Oregon, they were with my self-directed IRA. I'm not purchasing anything in the state of Oregon. And so I'm able to differentiate that. I also am not allowed to use any of the state's equipment. So even though I have a laptop next to me here in my home office, which is the state's, or if I'm in my office down in Salem, I've got to make sure that I am not using state equipment to do anything on my personal business. So you've got to be very disciplined. I guess that's the other word you have to use here, is you have to be disciplined to keep that separated. And if you have to make a phone call to a vendor or anything like that during your work day, you have to wait till the lunch hour, you have to wait till your break. And so it's a matter of being very, very disciplined. And then when you get home, dedicating the time to a lot of the paperwork, because you guys will know there's a lot of paper in the mortgage industry. Even though a lot of what we're trying to do here is electronic and digital. And we all say from time to time that we can do this job anywhere in the world, provided we have a good internet access. There's still a lot of paper involved here. And we haven't quite got to the full digital signature yet, and things such as that, but trying, just maintaining that discipline with keeping the two separate, but yet giving the proper time and energy. And then, it's a 40-minute trip one way to my office. And so I lose about an hour and a half each day when I make that commute. And by the time I get home, I've got to try and maintain a certain energy level, because it's hard. You got to have a why. You've got to have some motivation to give up coming home and putting your feet up and watching TV to come in here and do this. And so, part of my motivation is that, we got behind when it was the 2009, 2010 mortgage crisis. We got behind. And so I've got to catch up that difference. And so I've got to keep motivated to do that. As well as, there's things I want to do. And there's a lot to be said about being, a solopreneur versus being tied down to a W-2. I mean, here's a quick example, easy example. Here about 3 weeks ago, my youngest son that lives here as well, doesn't live with me, but he took a day off from his job to go skiing. And he wanted me to come with him, and I couldn't. I mean, I had things scheduled, I had stuff on the calendar, and I couldn't get out of them. And so I don't want to do that again. If he calls me up on a Thursday and say, let's go skiing tomorrow, I want to do that. I want to have the flexibility to do that. And with the day job, I don't actually have that flexibility. Kind of I do, but if things are already on the calendar, it's hard to do that. So, I guess
one to tie in there too is that sometimes you take a day off from your W-2 job to work on your business.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a lot going on as an asset that you're coming to do due diligence on. You're looking at 19 assets. You may need a day off, take a day off, a sick day, just to work on your business. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I get personal business days, and sometimes I get the cough. But like Monday, the Monday's President's Day, and I get that day off. And so you've got to take advantage of those as well.
So what do you do to assist you in those struggles of having a W-2 job, the limitation of hours, right?
Yeah.
That hour and a half commute. What were some of the things you adjusted? What tools did you use? What do you do to accommodate the lack of time?
How do you stay organized enough to be able to put it all in place?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Nathan. Yeah, obviously I have a pretty good calendaring system, but I have a really good filing system too, and I use the cloud quite a bit. And my phone, I have a nice iPhone with the Google Drive on it, so I really can get to any of the documents whenever I need to. So I try and maintain kind of a structured filing system to keep that organized, and that works out quite well.
Do you have any software you use or anything like that?
You know, I use, I have Pipe Drive going on for my CRM right now. There's some things about it I really, really like. There's some things about it that I wish it did more. And such is also the struggle is they keep adding features,
yes,
which means I have to sit down and take some time to learn these features. And so you've got to say, well, do I need to recalculate the ROI on this asset to submit, or do I want to look at the video on that? So,
sure.
I mean, some of the other things I've done is, you know, I get up a little earlier sometimes, and especially now that I'm working out of the house, I'll get up a little earlier to do that. Make sure that during the lunch hour, whenever that is, you know, you never want to let the clock tell you when you're hungry. And then I'll do some things in the evening, but you know, Saturday mornings I get up early and work on things on Saturday mornings. And you know, fortunately, one of the things about, you know, having an office in your house and being an entrepreneur, you know, you're always available. It always works. And so in sometimes those sleepless nights when you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't go back asleep. You know, I can sneak into my office and spend an hour in here and just try and do some stuff, you know, whether it's dealing with a vendor or paying an invoice and all this other stuff. I mean, you know, a lot of us in the last couple of weeks sent out 1099s, you know, so some of us are doing that.
I think what you said there made sense, because I found myself more and more getting up at that 3 a.m. and like wide awake. And the problem I have is once you're up, I'm up, right? Next, you know, I'll spend an hour doing something, or, oh, hey, I'm going to be an hour. It's 4 hours later, and you dove into so many rabbit holes, and you have caught up on emails. Like, you found time, and you don't have a lot of it, right? So I agree with you. I think, so was there anything you did, like system-wise, software-wise, that kind of helped you deal with the time? Because this is a space where you're doing due diligence, or, you know, finding assets, running numbers. Did you use any kind of tools or automations or assistants or, you know, virtual assistants to kind of help you with time restrictions?
You know, I don't. I have an ROI calculator I use. You know, obviously, my best friend is this thing right here. Oh, you guys, let's see. Can you see it?
Yep. Yes. 10B2.
This is a HP 12C. I've had one since the early 90s. Actually, I have several of them. And so this is my best friend especially on the performing notes. And so I hand calculate a lot of things. I can tell you right now how many days until Christmas. And so that's one of the features in this thing. In fact, here's a funny story. If you guys don't mind a funny story, is that, you know, at one point in time when I was a loan officer for Washington Mutual, early in my career with them, I was right down the street from Intel Corporation. And so we had a lot of high tech people come in, and I had a guy come in to be one of my loans. I did a lot of construction lending, all in one construction lending. And a guy came in to build a house, and he worked for Hewlett Packard. And, you know, I whip out my little thing here, and he goes, you know, let me tell you about that. It says, I am actually the guy that programmed the algorithms that go into this thing. Wow. I go, wow, that's pretty cool. He says, and I'll tell you, you'll notice that the keys never wear out. I go, no, they never do. No matter how many times and I've had this one here for 15 years. And he says, the reason is when they make those keys, they put those letters that go all the way through the key. So if you took one of those keys and cut it halfway, it'd still be as crisp as it is right now. So, yeah, it's just kind of a funny little thing that I learned a long time ago about this material. But, you know, that's just a trivia in case you get a trivia question on it.
So I want to talk about the discipline things. It's really interesting because both of you guys still have your regular daytime job. This is my full time.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And you know, people coming into the business, they're going to be coming from both sides. I think a lot of people are coming from the side of having the regular day job, and you're talking about the discipline and getting things done when you can, versus me, where I actually have 2 cell phones, Canadian, American. So my American one is my business phone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And at 5 o'clock or thereabouts, whenever I'm done, you know, sometime between 4:30 and 6, I plug this in back here and I close those doors, and that's it. And I walk away.
Wow.
Yeah.
And my business is done until morning. Nothing that will happen at 7 o'clock at night is going to make any difference between
I like it.
now and tomorrow morning.
I think that's part of what I've got driving me as well, is that, you know, I've got this entrepreneurial spirit. I want to work for myself. I want to set my own hours. But the day job inhibits that. So part of my motivation in moving from a note investor, even though I do have note investments of me personally, was setting up this fund, which is a note business.
Right.
And so because my goal at some point in time, and maybe this is the year, you know, I have some benchmarks that I have set that will guide me along the way. Maybe this is the year that I'm able to say, okay, I'm done with the W-2 job. I'm at a point with them that I can just move full time into the note business,
right?
And you know, do what Nathan does. Now I only have one phone, but I can still you know, set my own hours. And I know right now I'm going through a big deal because you know, I've been married for 36 years, 36 and a half years, and even though that's been going on for a long time, there's still, you know, you still have to continually build relationships. And so I've got to have a kind of an understanding wife, but at some point in time, you know, you've got to say something has to give. Because when you think of, you know, I've still got my own note investing. I've got the old entity that I'm winding down. I've got the day job. I've got the new entity that I'm building up. And then I have a family relationship. And so there's a lot of things that hit me on a day-to-day basis. And yesterday was one of those days, to be honest. I was a little overwhelmed. You know, there's just so much going on, because every one of those things I just listed there has a sub list of things going on as well. In fact, I use a software program, an online program called Workflowy. Workflowy is an online thing that basically is a list builder. And so I use that with every one of my headers, being the things that I just mentioned there and a couple of other ones. And then all the sub things going on underneath that. One of the things I want to do, and I had hoped to be able to do it in 2021, is start a podcast. I have a company that you guys may have seen called Funding Factors. Funding Factors is really my note media company. It's going to be something where I want to talk about, you know, notes to some degree. There are a lot of podcasts that talk about notes, and so I don't want to try and replicate that. There's a lot of great note podcasts out there, but I'm more interested in talking about business and lifestyle and being a solopreneur and those kind of things. And so that takes a heck of a lot of time to do a podcast, you know.
I want to pause real quick, Cody, and let you know that one thing we did, you touched upon it before with the phone. Years ago, I created myself, I have all my emails are G Suite emails, right? So with G Suite comes a Google Voice number. So you can literally turn that on and off, so that text message, phone calls, all that stuff can be shut off a period of time, and it's forwarded to my cell phone. And if I ever have to call somebody from the Google Voice, it calls and it shows up as a normal number. So just an idea, if you don't have it already, or if someone else is listening, that if you want to have it separate from your business, you can shut off the Google Voice number at any moment at separate 9 to 5 or whatever you want to set for. Have text messaging and phone calls. If you receive a text from us, more than likely it's not from our personal, it's from our business thing, so that multiple people could check it and also get forward to your email as well.
I do have that. That makes such a difference. You got to be able to. What I learned at some point along here was I run the business doesn't run me. It was getting to a point where it was getting completely out of hand, where all of my time was spent, you know, worrying about and thinking about and dealing with business. And then I took a step back and said, no, I'm in charge here, not the business. And it was a real mind shift to set parameters and boundaries. And And there's exceptions, of course. And if there's some kind of emergency, then sure, we'll deal with the emergency. But on a regular basis, no. Work hours are 9 to 5. And if I
And
want
it's
to go
good.
skiing in the morning, I go skiing in the morning because I can catch
So the
up. and it's not a
benefit,
big
Nathan,
deal.
you have there is the lack of W-2, right? You have
Right.
8 hours you can spend on doing whatever you need to get done.
Yeah.
Where, Cody and other people like ourselves have that limited time where sometimes
Right.
you have to get up at 5 a.m. if you have 30 emails and the
Yeah.
night before your wife want to go to dinner, right?
Yeah.
You have that struggles, or for myself and yourself, we have the kids going on, right?
Right.
And the kids come in to you, I'm going to put that off for a minute. So
Yeah.
what we did to change it is automate a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
As I talk about my automation, is you dedicate your time and block it out, and you're able to spend a half hour on the phone with a borrower. Where, someone like Cody or myself or other people, you have to find that break during your day job to sneak out to make the phone call.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I did different with the business that I didn't have with the prior entity is my oldest son is part of the business with me. My son
good.
Josh, and he's just brilliant. He's brought a new level of analysis and just a business acumen to the business, and he's been a tremendous help. And he's very sensitive to my schedule. He's very sensitive to my goal of exiting the W-2 job. So so he's been really integral to the successes that we've had with the fund. And so I want to make sure that you mentioned earlier, do I have VAs or anything like that? No, I've got something better. I've got my son, and he's pretty accomplished. He understands a lot about Excel that I just don't, with the VR lookups and all these other kind of things. He knows some formulas, and he's been putting some things together. So, hopefully that when we make a bid, especially on a bulk basis, that we've been able to drill down and get a quality bid that works for both parties, because he's set up, his systems on his side that give us the numbers. I've kind of got to the point where rather than me having to, drill down on every file so specifically, that I've relied on him, and so far I've been very pleased and very happy. And so he's again, I want to make sure that I get a shout out to him, because we can't do this job by ourselves.
No.
We talk a lot about all the vendors that we hire, whether it be some sort of concierge who will order our BPOs and our O&Es, or somebody that call the county, or all these other things involved there. You can't do this by ourselves. In fact, I need you guys, because there's things that we do, just the various platforms and the pages that we have on our social media, just to reach out and bounce stuff off. So, I mean, that's the important thing is I certainly don't want to say that I'm doing this all by myself, because you can't. You just can't do it.
No,
So,
And it's funny because I had time to talk to Josh. I know you know about this. Me and Josh spent probably a good hour on the phone. And it was amazing, his Excel knowledge and whatnot. We went back and forth to some things, and I was teaching him some stuff. I was sharing some stuff with him, but he has some amazing knowledge. So yes, Josh, I know you're probably listening on this. Great conversation. And his knowledge was kudos to you to kind of teach him what you've taught him. But I'm sure there's things that in the business that you still need to teach him, where he's a numbers guy, right? You're the notes and understanding the legality of stuff. But
and the relationships with borrowers through your servicing experience and things like that. Like there's ways to talk to people and not.
And you have to be cognizant of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which I am and he isn't. But and we're done a pretty good job, and it continually refines. Is Josh is going to be responsible for these kind of things. Like, I love him because he's paying the bills and dealing with the accounting side of stuff. Okay. But that allows me to try and seek new sources and deal with borrowers as I need to, and deal with asset managers. So, and each letter that we send out, we bounce off each other for a second set of eyes. And so I think, if you were to go to our website, bridgecityfactors.com, we have a little saying in there that says a refreshing approach to note investing. And so that's one of the little mantras that we kind of talk about, is we want to bring something different to the table that maybe a asset manager or whomever, an investor, finds it a little bit different. And so that's the challenge. That's the challenge we have every single day is what can we do different to differentiate ourselves from everybody else that's out there. And you guys know as well as I do, there's, 1,231 new note investors that started here just within the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And they're either going to rise up to a higher level, or my concern in some ways is that, just because of inexperience, that, they'll make a mistake, they'll create a situation that becomes pretty public and pretty visible.
Yeah.
And so, there's a time, I believe, just to sit and learn. I know that there's some eagerness that goes out there, but if you do have a day job, the note investing side is a great supplement. It's a great time to ramp up. There's opportunity there, but don't want to get too hasty in it, because, one of the bigger concerns is you're looking at various legislative bodies across the country.
Yeah.
They're doing two things. One, there's always a lack of revenue, and they're all very, very consumer oriented. Now, we always want to do the right thing for our borrowers, our consumers. There's a lot of ethical things that we bring to the table as well. But what I get concerned about from time to time when I see certain questions being asked is will this present a situation that becomes public enough that the government gets involved, and is there some sort of new rule, regulation, or something that comes into play because of somebody does something based on inexperience. Right. So I guess what I would say, assuming that there's some newer people listening to what we're talking about right here, don't ever be hesitant to reach out to those of us that have been around for a while. I don't want to be a guru. That's the thing. I don't want to start an education platform. I don't want to do that, not only because I don't have the time for it, but there's plenty of good educators out there already. Yeah. But what I will always do is I will always answer your telephone call. Yeah. And so if you just want to give me a call and bounce some stuff on, I talked to a guy yesterday who's kind of new in the business. He's got some financial resources behind him. And he kind of just wanted to talk about some things, residential, commercial, and kind of what sort of stuff like that. And I enjoy those calls. It's kind of a give back that I like to do back into the industry, especially the mortgage industry, that's been pretty good to me for the last 38 and a half years. And so
I agree. I'll take that call all day, and I can talk about notes. I'll come home, but but I'm not going to be your teacher. But for everyone's sake, please do reach out. If you don't know, don't guess, because it, like you say, Cody, it can land you into a whole lot of trouble, and frankly, it can make a lot of trouble for the rest of us.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of that. Yeah,
it's interesting to say, because I still remember the phone call I had with you, Cody, when we talked about some private stuff a couple years ago. And you're like, listen, I'm kind of new, not sure about things, but that phone call me understood that you knew where you were, with the fact that you can always call and ask questions. And that reassurance is good for a lot of people, which is different from more normal real estate, because you can't do that with normal real estate. What you're buying now, let's just dive into a little bit about what you're doing now. You're looking at assets without getting to details. Are you looking at particular states, performing, not performing, first, seconds? Where's your desire at?
Well, our target acquisition is about 60 to 65% of performing notes. We set up our fund, if you will, to try and provide a certain preferred rate back to our investors. And I can't talk about that specifically just because of the limitations in the Regulation D platform that we are registered with. But that's what we're trying to target. We're trying to target a 60 to 65% of performing loans. We'll look at another 15 to 20% of reperforming loans, ones that I consider real reperforming loans, not one that just had a modified in 3 payments. That's not a reperforming loan, in my opinion. I'd like to see a 12-month history to pay the prices. But you think the premise would be that you can actually get a little bit better price on a reperforming loan than you could on a regular performing loan. And then we left a certain 10 to 15% available for non-performing loans. And there's some specific strategies we have in that. One of the things that I've said since I've got into the note business for my own self is that, I've spent 30 plus years putting people into homes. I want to end my career keeping people in homes.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do when we buy non-performing loans is I never really buy one specifically with the target of going through a foreclosure and reselling it. We want to try and find one where that homeowner has some sort of issue that created the hardship, the distress, that perhaps they have overcome it, or with certain strategies, we can find a workout that works for everybody. And so that's what our goal is, to try and keep those homeowners in the house, get them to make 12 months of consistent payment, and then I can resell that out as a reperforming note. So that's kind of our strategies. That's what we're looking at. Try and provide a cash flow opportunity for ourselves and for our investors, and also take advantage if we do have to end up going through a foreclosure process, that homeowner gets to exit that property with dignity, and that we can get them and get another person in that house, or sell it at an auction, or position it where it works out well for everybody. So that's our goal on that. It's part of just the morality and ethics that we want to try and bring to this note industry business. And I'll be one of the first ones that call bullcrap when I see something that is anything other than that. Because if you're in this here just simply to try and foreclose on somebody, I think that's secondary of all. And when that's your primary, goal, another thing is you foreclose, you can always turn it into a rental property. We got one right now in my old entity that we ended up taking a deed in lieu, put about $40,000 into it, put a tenant in it. Now I've got trying to market it as a turnkey rental to another investor, and carry seller financing on that. Because another thing is, I don't want to be a landlord. I am for the moment. But I want to be a note investor, and that'd be another one that I could put in my personal portfolio. So, I know it's a lot of things there, but hopefully that answered the question. So
one of the questions that in the Facebook feed is that someone's looking for a mentor, right? One thing that's holding it back is deciding who should hold their hand. What is your suggestion or answer to those who are looking for a mentor to hold their hand along the process?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the vetting process. If somebody aligns with your own personal philosophy, then that's probably the right person to continue to talk on. I know one of the things, and I'll use this as an example, is that, again, there's a lot of note funds out there, but really rather than invest in the note fund, you're really kind of investing with the sponsor. And so you have to go through that vetting process to make sure that your personal philosophy and goals and morals and ideas match up with the person that you want to align yourself from a mentor aspect of it. And so I think that's the main thing. So if somebody's getting started out, they don't want to talk to the first or get aligned with the first person they talk to. So somebody should talk to all three of us, okay? And even though the three of us, for the most part, have a lot of similar looks at it, at this industry, there's just something that's going to click in whatever we do from a personality standpoint or whatever, and that's the thing that might push you towards one person versus another. So that's the main thing. You got to make sure that you align philosophically with the person that you're going to work with. And so it's all a business. Whether you're a note investor or running a note business, you have to treat it like a business. And so every one of us need to have a model written down and stay within the model. So one of the things when I was a RIA president, and I did bring speakers in every month, whether they were local or national, a lot of them sold stuff. And I always would tell the members of the RIA that, we're bringing somebody in, this is what they're talking about. If it's part of your written model, you got a business going on, even though it may be a side hustle, if it's part of your model, and they click with you, then go ahead and buy the program and add it to what you're doing. But if it's not part of your model, or you don't click with something, or something doesn't set right, in your gut, then listen, grab a few nuggets, but don't spend your money. And so same thing goes on with educators. The same thing goes on with people that you're going to mentor with or want to mentor with you. A lot of it is how you align. And I've said this a couple of times, align philosophically with them. So,
and I think interesting what you said there is one of the things I tell people. I'm not big on mentored with one person, right? I think if you reach out to 3-4 note investors and just get their idea about what situation. You're going to get maybe a slightly different answer from all of them, but it's actually better than just getting it from one.
Oh, I agree.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes not pigeonhole yourself into one mentor, pigeonhole yourself to 4 or 5 of them that you do like, or 3 that you like, and say, listen, I'm going to bounce the same idea off 3 different people to get their opinion, their suggestions, their thoughts, because we all have our different experience versus just one thing, right? I think that with that, it helps the person get a different perspective. But, so I'm always in favor of don't find the mentor, find the network.
Yeah.
I agree. And rarely, I can't even think of one time, but rarely will somebody who's been in the business for a while not pick up the phone and talk with you. I find that very, very refreshing in the note industry. Is that, there's only really 2 things that we keep secret, and that's our, well, maybe 3, maybe 4. But one of them, of course, is our sources. One of them is our ROI calculators. Although Dave, you've been very, very generous with yours. And there's in our marketing aspects of things, we kind of keep those kind of secret. But as far as, situations and things that we encounter, or how would I look at this, or maybe a technical question. I mean, this is a very, very refreshing industry because we're all open. I had an old boss a long time ago when I was kind of what we called a grunt loan officer. I was just getting my feet wet being a mortgage loan officer. This was before computers, when everything was done by hand. And he told me all boats rise with the tide.
Yeah.
And so if Nathan's doing well, then I'm pretty sure that Dave's doing well and I'm doing well. And if I can help, somebody who's been in the industry for 6 months or less, them do better, then I think it's positive for everybody. And so that's, kind of my approach as people talk to me is if I can help you take a step forward, then we all get to take a step forward together.
So I would add one more thing for the mentor question.
Yeah.
Is I think before you, if you are looking for somebody that's going to hold your hand and walk you through it, make sure your expectations are very clear on what exactly does that look like, because mentor's definition and your definition may not match. So make sure that you're on the same page of that, and the expectation is clear of what it is. What are you exactly looking for? And then be realistic. If you want to be sitting in their office with them and, day in, day out, that may not be realistic. Maybe it is. Maybe somebody's going to offer that, but that may not be realistic. So just make sure that you understand.
And I think by networking with them, you're going to find people say, who else are you talking to? And there are people in the space that we all know we don't agree with. And if that person comes to us, we're not going to talk bad about them, but you can get a sense who we trust, who we don't trust.
Sure.
And you can kind of get that. We don't talk bad about people, but you can say, hey, listen, look at this person. What your thoughts are? And you can read between the lines what we think of that person, versus someone reached out to me just recently on enough and said, listen, I'm looking at a loan Nathan has for sale. Right away, yeah, Nathan's a good guy. You can trust him. The deal's good. That happens so quickly because of the relationships we've built over the years, not 3 months. We've been talking to Cody and Nathan for years now, which is crazy, but.
And it's a tight community, and not to say that it's exclusive, but tight just meaning we're everyone's friendly with each other. And like you say, Cody, we can talk to each other. Sure. And we do all the time, and to say, hey, I've never seen this. Oh, me neither. And
Nathan, I remember the first time I met you face to face, it was at, was it Paper Source in Vegas one year?
Okay.
And you're taller than you look on TV. And I remember walking up to you, and it's like, we've known each other for a while. Yeah. It's like, we don't know all the intricacies and details, but it's like, hey, I can pick up a conversation at a conference as well as I can on the telephone. So that's the tightness that you refer to in this industry is there's folks that you can just talk to, and you get to know us all. I'm pretty excited. I'm hoping that sometime this year conferences start up again.
Crossed, we'll see.
Face to face. I mean, because I miss the personal interaction. The Zoom meetings are great. They're fine. They've kept us connected. But going and talking to somebody just for the networking aspect of it all, is very, very worthwhile for me. So
Me too. Yeah.
You know, I know she asked additional questions, like she looking for someone who's not a scam, someone to help with due diligence. And, you know, due diligence is a big word, right? And some of that stuff you gotta have to learn your own. And there are great courses out there. I know Dan Deppen, not sure if Dan's listening in. He has a due diligence course. But I think a lot of stuff is just asking questions.
Yeah.
When you get into it, just, hey guys, I'm stuck in due diligence. And we just comment back, what part of due diligence? There's plenty of space in due diligence. We talking collateral, we talking O&E, we talking, you know, the deal itself, valuations. What do you do? How do you value a property? You know, do you do
it
a
depends
drive-by?
also, what's your final, what do you want from this? Because that's going to shape your due diligence up front as well. If you're looking for a performing note, that's going to be totally different than one that you're looking at, you know, a potential foreclosure. And that's,
There's
it's
so
like you
many
say,
things.
there's so many
See,
ways it could go.
Nathan, that is a great point, because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, you know, that old adage from 7 Habits is begin with the end in mind.
Exactly.
And then you start there. What do I want this to look like?
Right,
and then reverse engineer it back to where it is to go. So how do you, this is what I want it to look like. How do I go backwards to get it to where it looks like today? And then with the understanding that it may not get to what you want it to be ideally, and be prepared for, you know, to zig down this other rabbit trail. And if it does that, what does your net result look like that? So that's a really great point, is, you know, and it all goes back to your written model. What do you want?
Exactly.
What's your predominance amount of what you want to do as a business? And how do I get this particular one to work? And there's just going to be some loans, some notes that you look at that aren't going to work that way. You'll see that.
Yep.
But as we've heard 1,000 times, I mean, I can drive from Portland to New York, and it's better if I go by a map rather than not, because otherwise, who knows? I might end up in Jersey. So
yeah.
Don't want it up here. You don't want to come here. We're still trying to get out. So Cody, you know, I'm going to ask this last final question. What is keeping you inside your day job and not retiring 3 years ago, besides the money? Is there something else that's happened? You know, we don't want to get into intricacies on how much millions of dollars you've made, but what's held you back from diving in? Is it nervousness? Is it scaredness? Is it something else? Because I know what mine is, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the philosophical question I've been asking myself for a while. You know, I talked to a very important, somebody outside the industry just this last Sunday, very, very briefly after church, and they said, you'll know when you know, and sometimes you just have to take that leap. I asked one of my sons last night, and I asked Josh from time to time, is there something in my day job that keeps me comfortable? Okay. And so is that one of the things, and I look at, everybody teaches us, shows us that, you've got to have 3 or 5 months of reserves in the bank, and you've got to work your side hustle to a point it can replace your income from your day job. And then you draw out this budget and say, I need this for the house payment, this for the car payment, and all these other things. I want to keep the lights on. It's snowing out. I need the heat on. And so sometimes it's being comfort. I'm not really scared to take pull the trigger. But I also know, I'm trying to buy 19 notes. That's kind of a pretty significant trigger. Yeah. But I'm not the only one that gets to make that decision also. Okay. Like I mentioned, I've been married for 36 and a half years. And so that's a pretty big decision that affects her lifestyle as well as mine. Mm-hmm. And so, those are the kind of things that come into play on that. This is a kind of a funny thing, but it's amazing how many Medicare insurance companies know how old I am. And so that's a choice that's coming into my vision here real shortly. I mean, I got stuff all over on my desk. You probably can't see that, of just mailers I get about trying to make those decisions and come with that plan. And so I'm trying to build like a 3 or 4 legged stool. Okay. So I've got stuff coming from this account, stuff from this account. So those are the kind of the things that run through my head at 3 o'clock in the morning is that, when can I do that? I have set probably a resignation date 3 or 4 times. I have the letter written and I keep forwarding the date. Okay. But it's come to the point, it's going to come to the point where I say, I just can't do this anymore. I'm limited in energy. I'm limited in time. And what do I really, really want to do? It's like, what do I want to do when I grow up? And so that's kind of what I'm hoping comes clear here this year. I see
eventually one impedes the other. So then you got to make a choice.
Yeah. And if we're successful in this submission, this indicative bids that we sent in yesterday, if I'm successful on at least half of them, that's going to be a big step to what we do next. I've been very, very fortunate that I've been able to work out of the home since almost a whole year now. And been able to do the good division between the two. But it's almost like it's been preparatory in a lot of ways. So
it's interesting because for me, it was more for healthcare. My wife won't let me quit because of the healthcare package with the state. But we juggle a lot, and you do your lunch hour stuff like that. But or you bring your laptop to work with you. I've done that before. My day job fulfills some other needs, which you said before. It does have some good perks to it, that I enjoy doing. But at one point or another, you do have to make that leap, and your spouse is your second partner on it. Everything you do. But I think for a lot of those who are listening, getting into even the person speaking, she wants to buy her first note, right? And learning the space can be scary. I'll make probably one of our final questions. What would you give advice to a person who's scared to get in? How do you get over that fear?
Well, a lot of that comes from what you've done yesterday. And so if you've prepped yourself yesterday or the day before, then that'll lead you to take action today. You don't want to be a professional student. At some point in time, you've got to get over that hump. But I think preparation and there's a scripture that says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. And so don't, like we talked about a little bit earlier here, don't be concerned or hesitant is the word I use, not to just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm looking at this note. It's my first purchase. This is what I see. And then one of us will be able to ask them okay, what is it you don't see? And so those are the kind of things is preparation, ask people, and then you just got to do it. A lot of us say that if you purchase your first note, maybe you do it in your self-directed IRA or similar vehicle and buy a performing note, one that's going to take care of itself while you learn the nuances of that. The other preparation part of it is make sure you have your vendors already lined up. You don't want to buy a note today and then not have somebody to order an O&E from, not a realtor. I mean, Dave's got tremendous resources where you can pick up a phone and call a realtor in the area that this asset is sitting. But make sure you have your servicing company set up. You've looked at their contract. You've looked at their fees. All that preparatory back office stuff helps you take a step and build your confidence because you've got that already taken care of. One of the things I talked about, and I used to send out a newsletter every week. I've got a little bit more sporadic on that, but it had to do with talking about, you'll find in the note history, it's hurry up and wait. Okay? And so you'll notice that you're going through a whole bunch of notes and you kind of find maybe 1 or 2 or 3 you want to put a bid in on. So there's you put your bid on it, then you got this 2-week period that once you get approved and you got to finish it all off, and then you wait again as the note gets transfers, it gets up in servicing. So use those downtimes, those wait times to build your confidence, get a little bit educated, look a little bit deeper in the file that you're looking at. And so it's all preparatory, it's a little bit education, but you don't want to just be a professional student. You want to make sure that if you're going to spend the money,
Yep.
that you got to take that next step. Again, going back to my experience as a RIA president, we had a lot of people that bought those packages, but they're still sitting on the desk getting all dusty. You know, that's the not wisest use of your funds. It may be the easiest, but it's time to get uncomfortable if you want to take the next step.
Yeah. Awesome advice, my man.
Thank you.
I don't have any further questions, Nathan. You have anything else you want to add, Mr. Cody?
I think that's it. It's really interesting talking to Cody because so many of us come from a real estate background,
Yes.
and Cody's coming up from the right side of it,
Yeah.
from the servicing and finance side of it,
Yeah.
which is really the best preparation, much better than the real estate side. So it's you've got an interesting perspective, and
And again, I'm trying to be kind of visible right now. The day will come where I'll fall off the radar. But as long as I'm visible, anybody out there that's listening, go ahead and reach out to me. I'm encouraged to see what's going on out there. It's a great industry to be in. If you do it right, it's a win-win-win for everybody involved. And as long as we maintain that philosophy on it, it's going to be good for us.
So last question that I got for you, Cody, I asked Fred Moskowitz a couple weeks ago, where do you see this going? Where are we going in 2021? Where's the industry going?
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing because I've had some conversations about that. There's a lot of forbearance stuff that's going to expire here. There's some legislation that's getting involved on a national, statewide basis. There's a lot of scratch and dents that are out there too that are still overpriced. But I'm pretty optimistic about it. I mean, for the people who have the right connections, if you will, the right network, it's going to be okay. And so building the network, there was a period of time where I just kind of had to take a pause on some things. Dave knows, the issues surrounding that. And so I spent my time in that season building my network. And so we don't want to be too hasty. We certainly don't want to overbuy some things. There's a lot of that some sellers are counting on. But use this as a season to develop, to read more, to learn more. I think opportunity is going to be around the corner. Actually, I think at the end of March, when the forbearance stuff is completely and the moratoriums are lifted, there'll still be some things going on. We deal in the private sector, if you will, the private secondary market, which is opposed to the government sponsored stuff. And there's still things out there that can become available. So I'm optimistic about what 2021 and 2022 are going to do. Again, to me, it looks like it's another opportunity for us to help some homeowners. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, Cody, I'm going to disconnect from Facebook Live.
Thank you.
I did post, my assistant posted your name and email address into the feed.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to reach out, they can definitely do that.
Sure.
So I appreciate everyone tuning in, watching it. We'll have a replay, I'm sure, live, and we'll go from there. Hope all is well. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching, and we'll go. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right. Talk to you guys. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
You bet. Thank you.